welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about choosing pricking iron sizes. And today I'm not going to do any demonstration. I'm going to just talk a lot about numbers and just information. I'm going to say a lot. So if you are really struggling how to choose pricking iron sizes or what kind of style you're trying to achieve, this video might be a helpful tip for you. So first of all, I'd like to talk about what is the difference between European and Japanese pricking iron. And the one thing very important on what people confuse is the origin of manufacturer doesn't mean anything. It's a European or Chinese or European pricking iron. So your European style pricking iron could be made in Asia, or it could be really made in Europe, or it could be made in UK or in US, or it could be also made in Japan. Yeah, so don't think about where the tool is made. Think about what is the style of the teeth looks like. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what it looks like for European stitching pricking iron. Okay, so this is what European pricking iron looks like. It has a very flat teeth. Okay, and if you just look straight into it, it has a line of teeth. Yeah, you see a line. Okay, this one is another brand. Also, you see a flat teeth, right? And if you look straight into it, you also see just a line of teeth. Yeah, at the end of it, just a flat line. This is European pricking iron. Yeah, and this is Japanese pricking iron. If you look, it has a very sharp tip. Yeah, and the teeth is more rounded also as well. So even though it's flat, if you look at the tip, it's not like flat cut, it's spear point. Yeah, like this. And also this one is also the Japanese pricking iron, and also it's spear point. So this is Japanese pricking iron. Yeah, the angle of this the teeth is a little bit different as well, but I'm not going to talk too much detail in this video. So just see the difference between what are these two differences. This one is Japanese pricking iron, sharp pointy tip, and European pricking iron, flat tip. Yeah, that is the main difference. And whether you should choose Japanese pricking iron or European pricking iron, it really depends on what kind of leather you're using or what kind of style or look for you're trying to achieve. And the thing that I've noticed from my leathercraft journey so far was that vegetable tan leather can take European and Japanese pricking iron very well. Vegetable tan leather, whether it's a bridal or any natural vegetable tan leather, whether it's color, vegetable tan leather does look really good on Japanese pricking iron and also European pricking iron as well. But if you're using chrome leather, that's a little bit different story. I found it's not so much pleasant look if you use Japanese pricking iron with chrome tan leather. So with the chrome tan leather, I tend to go with the European pricking iron because it just looks much better. I think it's because of how soft the leather is. Because the leather is so soft, if you use Japanese pricking iron, stitching is okay, but it doesn't look as elegant as I want it to be. So for chrome leather, I tend to go with the French pricking iron. So if you're trying to use only chrome tan leather, go for European pricking iron pricking iron as well, because it just looks more neat and more clean look. Yeah. For if you're using also vegetable tan leather, having a set of Japanese pricking iron it will not hurt. So if you're using both leather and also if you work a lot with vegetable tan leather, which is easier to work with, you can also go for Japanese pricking iron. It's easy to use and the stitching looks also really great as well. Yeah, so that was my opinion and idea towards these two types of pricking iron. It's just a matter of taste and there's no answer for this, so don't worry too much about it. Yeah. So today the main topic is all about this pictures and numbers. So I'm going to just start with the sizes of each pricking iron. So when I started leathercraft about 11 years ago, I also had a really curious idea of what these numbers came from. You know, I never really understood how these numbers came about, especially like 3.37 number looks quite odd, and also 2.07 also looks quite odd because it's not a number so that that drops. You know, it's not a 3 or 4, 3.2. It just has this hundreds of millimeter differences in these numbers. And I will today talk about this, how the sizing came about. Yeah. Also, the Japanese pricking iron sizes also consists of like this. There are still makers in Japan who makes traditional Japanese iron, but the demand and supply is not so good. So it's really difficult to find Japanese makers who can sell internationally with a proper size like this. So the hobbyist in Japan and the demand for leathercraft market in Japan was really huge. From 20-30 years ago, it was already big in Japan. So they came about with a hobbyist pricking iron like this, so that it can be mass produced. So these type of Japanese pricking iron you might be already know of. These are made of size with 3, 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, and also 3.5. So these three, these numbers you guys might be very familiar with, which is it's really easy to calculate and it's really easy to recognize and remember as well. These are very common type in Japanese pricking iron, but that's just because of the mass production, and these are more like irregular types in Japan, and the other numbers are all the true genuine Japanese pricking iron size. And I do have a set of Japanese pricking irons back in South Korea. I don't have it in my hand right now, but I will definitely do the review on those so that you can see what are these sizes looks like. Yeah. So I would like to talk about how these sizes are formed. So if you are familiar with millimeters, you have to be aware that British and US and some other countries also uses this imperial inch. I know you guys use inch, foot, yard. So 1 imperial inch is 24.4 millimeter. Yeah, and that makes foot and inches. But in a pre-revolutionary France, there used to be a called Paris inch. Yeah, that is 27.069 millimeter. You can look it up in Wikipedia, or you can Google it. You can find more about it. So in a pre-revolutionary France, there was Paris inch, and 12 Paris inch makes 1 Paris foot. This Paris inch is very important in the later slide, so please be aware this 1 Paris inch. And next, in Asia, Japan, South Korea, and also China, there is a system called Chakwanpab. In Japanese is called Shakanho or Shakukan system. That is using a traditional, it's like inches and foot, but in Asian version. We do have a specific length system. We don't use it anymore we used it until 1960s. We mean by South Koreans. Yeah. So 1 sun, it's called sun. Yeah, it's 30.33 millimeters. Yeah. So isung, this is called you read it as isung. Yeah, isung is 30.33 millimeters, and that is important for sizing Japanese pricking iron. So I will not go too much detail about it. If you are interested in, you can just Google it, these words, and you can find it online. Yeah. So on European pricking iron, if you buy from Berger Blanchard, this is a photo from Berger Blanchard, they indicate the size of the pricking iron and the number of the teeth. So for example, this is size 12, but this is 4 teeth. So size and the teeth number. So this is size 10, 20 teeth, and this is size 12, and this is number of the teeth. So size first and then number of the teeth. Okay, and this sizing is very interesting because this indicates how many stitches in 1 Paris inch. Okay, so if you make a pricking iron mark on your leather, it will show that within 27 millimeter in 1 Paris inch, number of the stitches that you give makes the sizing of the pricking iron. Okay, so again, within 27 millimeter in 1 Paris inch, if your pricking iron shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches, this is size 8. Yeah, so that's how French European pricking irons are made. So if I just show you how it's being used, so for example, here, if I look again, within 27 millimeter, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 8 stitches per inch. Yeah, so 8 stitches per inch. Yeah, 8 SPI. And this 8 SPI is this one, and the spacing between the teeth is 3.37 millimeter. Yeah, 3.37 millimeter. So how you calculate would be quite easy. So let's say you have the pricking iron like this, yeah, and you don't know the millimeter size or what kind of size you have for your pricking iron, but you do know your size, right? You have a size 10, 20 teeth, right? So then go to your chart or just bring out your calculator, put 27 and divide by 10 because you have size 10, okay? And that makes your spacing for your pricking iron, that's 2.7 millimeter. If you have a 12 size pricking iron, what kind of size do I have? You type 27 divided by 12, that makes 2.25 millimeter. Yeah, for your size 6, also you type 27 divided by 6, that makes 4.5 millimeter. So that's what these numbers came from. All these numbers are 27 divided by all these numbers. So that's how the number is decided. So if you are trying to figure out what kind of sizing you have in your pricking iron, you don't have to remember, just remember 27 and divide by your pricking iron size, and that's it. Yeah. So how the industry really uses is they do have this kind of marker, or they do have this type of tool that this spacing from tip to tip is exactly 27 millimeter. So it made to be 1 Paris inch. So you can bring this to your stitching, so you can check what kind of sizes that you have done. Especially in sewing machine guys, they need to check the spacing of their stitches. So up till this day, for sewing machine guys, they also need to check their spacing according to the standards that's still been used in this stitches per inch system. So they check their stitching with this type of tool. You can buy them. This photo was from eProsa, it's from French company. You can also make this tool if you are handy with your files and metalworking. It's just a quite neat tool that you can check your stitching for your sewing machine or even for your hand stitching as well. Yeah. So for Japanese pricking iron, this is a little bit of different story. Now I want you to forget about this pricking iron for European size, because this is a bit different story. So in Japanese pricking iron size world, how the pricking iron is made is quite amazing. Huh? So all of the pricking iron that's traditionally made Japanese pricking irons are all the same. The width is always 30.33 millimeter. Of course, you will have a 3 or 4 or 5 teeth, of course, but for standard Japanese pricking iron, the width will stay the same. Yeah, and what differs is how many teeth you will have within this 30.33 millimeter. Yeah, so that's how the Japanese pricking iron saws are made. So it's not about the stitching number, it's about the tool. So how many teeth are there in this isun? Yeah, in this 30.33 millimeter. Yeah. So if you have a Japanese pricking iron, you can also turn it into a kind of sizing system. Normally this sizing wouldn't matter in Japanese leathercraft. It just matters how many teeth you have within this 30.33 millimeter. So it doesn't matter what size you have, because this point to this point will be always the same, but the stitching will be different. Do you know what I mean? So all the tool will have a same size from here to here. Only number of the teeth changes. Yeah. So if you want to convert it into a sizing system, what you can do is you can -1 from your size. So I don't have any Japanese pricking iron in my hand, traditionally made one, so I cannot show you. But if you have a traditional 12 Japanese size, you have to do the -1, because it creates a stitching that is -1 number of the pricking iron. So what I mean is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This has 9 teeth, right? But your stitching is here, this part, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so 8 stitching. Okay, so 9 minus 1 is 8. So you need to divide by this 8 stitching from this 30.33 millimeter. So minus 1 from your pricking iron size, and that makes these numbers. So that's what makes these odd numbers for Japanese pricking iron. And this Isung system is quite interesting. This is still used in Japanese carpentry and also the structural system. So they use it a lot on their knives and tools, especially Japanese plane, and also Japanese leather knives are still measured in this size. So that 24 millimeter Japanese leather knife and 36 millimeter Japanese leather knives are from this system. So those are not the random numbers, those are from this unit system. Yeah. And the plane also as well, your Japanese plane, is it 48, is it 51, 52, whatever. These are from this system. That's why it's odd number like that. Okay, so now let's talk about sizing and what application you should use for sizing. And I have to emphasize again, there is no absolute answer for this. Craft is craft. You have to use your imagination. Yeah, always don't think inside the box. Think outside the box. You can do whatever you want. Okay. This is the only suggestion, yeah. So and also the typical trend in the industry, you don't have to follow this, yeah. Always use your imagination. Okay. So this is my recommendation for French European pricking iron size application. So you do have from 13 size to 3 size, yeah, which you have a large difference within this big pricking iron and also small differences in pricking iron. I am a very big fan of 3.0 millimeter and 2.7 millimeter. These are still really small for me, but I'm looking into this smaller pricking iron size as well, because smaller stitching gives you the high-end, the fine detail look. So if you're making wallets and watch bands, you can use all the way from 2.07 millimeter to 3 millimeter. Yeah, these are good for your small leather goods, wallets and watch bands. Yeah. From 3.37 millimeter to up to 3.85, this is really intermediate size for between small and big leather goods. So you can use for small leather goods as well, but then I recommend it for medium stitching, for clutch and small bags, because one downside for this small stitching is that you have to stitch a lot if you're using on a big bags. If you're using small stitches, your stitching gets so many pricking iron marks on your leather. It takes a lot of time to do the stitching. So if you like, you can do it, but it takes too much time and it will not show too much difference on your work. So I recommend these two sizes for medium leather goods. And starting from 4.5 millimeter up to 6.75, you can use it for large leather goods. It will be definitely look really nice if you use proper side thread, and also the color of the thread, which is another topic, and I'm going to talk about it later. So these sizes are good for large leather goods, or medium leather goods as well. And 9 millimeter is a bit too big for any leather goods, but in special application or special stitching look, you might want to be interested into 9 millimeter as well. Yeah? And forget about what I just said here, because this was just aiming for application, what kind of things are you making, okay? Now, in this new chart, it's the same, on this side it's the same, but this side is different. On here, I'm going to talk about, it depends on thickness of leather you're stitching with. So, from the experiences, I have gathered idea of just feeling of what kind of stitching is proper for this type of thickness and so on. So again, this is my my idea and my suggestion. This is not the answer. So what I've been really learned from experiences, I believe that if it's too thick leather, if you stitch with a thin, small pricking iron, it's really difficult, and also it's really looks weird if you use small stitching irons for thick leather. So the maximum limit that I suggest for this type of small pricking irons, the thickness of leather, the total thickness that you final stitching thickness, the leather should be maximum 2 mm to 2.5 mm, which means you need to have a thin leather to begin with. So if you glue 1 mm and 1 mm together, that creates 2 mm, right? But if you glue 4 layers of 1 mm leathers, that makes 4 mm. So that already exceeds the maximum. And that's quite difficult to stitch with these small irons. It is possible, but then it's really difficult and it looks quite funky in later on. So think about the thickness that you're stitching with. Yeah, for 4.5 mm thickness maximum, I recommend 3.37 and 3.85. You can do it quite well with this pricking iron size for this thickness. So you might want to consider this as well. And from 4.5 to 6.75, you can stitch up to 5.5 mm up to 7 mm total thickness of the leather. So if you're making sheath, for example, your knife, or if you're making a pretty thick sheath for your axe, maybe this pricking iron size will be a really good size for your project. Yeah, and if you need to stitch such a thick leather, like if you're stitching like weight belt, if you're stitching very thick leather item, you can stitch with a 9 mm. You will not have a problem stitching up to 20 mm, which is almost 2 centimeter, nearly 1 inch. I think it's no problem. Yeah. For Japanese pricking iron, this is about Japanese pricking iron again. I did it. It's the same as a European pricking iron, but I just did it just in case. You guys might wonder. So for sizing from 2.33 mm to 3.5 mm, it's good for small leather goods. The thickness also depends. I will show you in the next slides. But for small leather goods, Japanese size from 2.3 to 3.5 is good. For medium, 3.79, almost 3.8, also 4 mm. Yeah. And for medium leather, large to medium and large leather goods, 4.3 to 7.58. Yeah, so you can definitely see the trend that small stitching is suitable for small leather goods and large stitching looks good on the large leather goods. Yeah. And again, if we think about the thickness of the leather, the total thickness that we were stitching, size from 2.3 to 3.5, you can stitch up to 2 mm to 2.5 mm. For thickness to 4 to 4.5 mm, 3.379 to 4 mm is good for this thickness, and 5.5 to 7 mm you can use 4.3 to 7.58 mm. This is my guidance, if you will. So that's it. So guys, like I said, there is no answer for this type of pricking iron size and the leather thickness or anything like that. That was just my suggestion because a lot of guys ask for this kind of questions, and I just need to have the lines of some of the little guidelines for a lot of people. So I just tried to make a short body video, but it became quite long already. But hopefully this video helped you to clear your mind a little bit on sizing and what kind of type you're using. So hopefully this will help you to purchase a new pricking iron for your leatherworking journey. So yeah, that's it. So I'm going to do next video how you should use your pricking iron for Japanese and European pricking iron. It's a little bit different and a little bit different topic. Pricking iron, stitching iron. Terminology is not so important for me. It just depends on technique. So in the next video I'm going to talk about how to use pricking iron. So if you are interested in my videos, you can subscribe to my channel, like this video up please already, and you can leave the comments if you have any questions. I will leave the comments as soon as possible if I can. So hopefully I hope you have a great day, and I will see you guys next video. Bye bye.